Are you seeing now the
The
agenda?
agenda. Mhm.
Okay, so
Yes.
we can go, Diana.
Good morning. Good morning to all of our DKG chapter and state treasurers and members who have joined us this morning. We welcome you to the first Treasurers Talk for this biennium. We're pleased that you've joined the 60-minute informative session. My name's Diana Haskell, and I serve as the 2024-2026 chairman of the DKG Finance Committee. The work of this committee is twofold. One, we provide the resources and support our local chapter and state treasurers need to be successful in their fiduciary responsibilities. And two, we provide recommendations as well as the study on budget, GAAP, and governance to the DKG Administrative Board. I'm a 32-year-old member from Ohio, and I serve at the state level as Ohio State Treasurer and at the chapter level as an elected chapter president. During Treasurers Talk today, you'll meet the remarkable and elected Finance Committee members and DKG staff members that collectively have your state and chapter needs in the forefront. And I'm delighted to present Liz, who will go over our agenda with us. And then Liz, if you'll continue and introduce the other members of our team following. Yeah, go ahead. I guess we'll start then with introductions. I saw the slide up there and we'll go back to that, Liz. Mary Whitten, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep. So I'm Mary Whitten. I live in Central Maine and I serve as the Finance Committee Chair in the state as well. So you want Diane Anderson?
Would you like to introduce yourself, Dr. Diane Anderson?
Sure. I'm Diane Anderson, and I am the Tennessee State Treasurer, as well as being my elected chapter president. I have been state treasurer this is my 6th year, and I truly enjoyed this. Before that, I was webmaster, and I currently work as a technology director for a school system in Tennessee.
Thank you. Janice, would you like to introduce yourself? Is Janice not here yet?
No, we haven't seen her.
Okay. Liz, would you like to introduce yourself?
I will. I'm Liz Van Westenberg. I'm from Northern Michigan. I am a former state president and both a chapter and state organization treasurer with numerous years of experience in both positions. I'm so happy to be on this committee.
Thank you, Liz. And I know that Dr. Beverly is here. I saw her.
Yes, good morning. I just came on for moral support for this wonderful committee, and they have been working many hours preparing this for you all. So I want to publicly thank them for all the work that they are doing. And all of you as well for the work that you do.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Lucinda is here. But we definitely know that our Peggy Jonas is here, our liaison. Peggy, would you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I lose when I'm on the slideshow, I lose the Zoom screen. So it's very disconcerting. I'm like talking to my slide. Anyway, good morning. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We're going to try and keep ourselves on time and on schedule. I'm Peggy Jonas. I'm finance director. I work at your headquarters. You're welcome to contact me with any time with any questions.
Well, thank you. And I know that Bill Staples is here, but I don't know if we have communication with him.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi,
yes.
Bill. Welcome. Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yay. Okay. So I'm Bill Staples. I'm the Office and Facilities Manager at DKG headquarters. And I also work a great deal with helping treasurers with the 990N submissions to the IRS.
Well, thank you, Bill. That's so important, and we appreciate all that you do and all that Peggy does and the entire staff at DKG headquarters. You're tremendously supportive every time we call and friendly. Thank you. All right. Liz, do you want to go over our agenda this morning quickly, and then we'll get things rolling?
I will. And if we can go back to that slide, please, Peggy. Are you able to? This is the agenda that you've been seeing for the last few minutes. And I want to say hello, everyone, and welcome. If you take a look at the agenda, some of the things are self-explanatory, but I do want to mention that the 990N discussion is at the end of our agenda because it applies only to U.S. state and chapter organizations. If you're from another country, this will have no impact probably or interest to you. So at that point in time, we'll let you know. You'll be able to exit the meeting while we go through the information about filing our 990N with the U.S. IRS. The other thing I want to note, please, towards the bottom right, SOLT might be something that you don't necessarily recognize, but that stands for the State Organization Leadership Training. It will be 2 days prior to the conference in New Orleans next summer, and we hope to see our state treasurers there with the other officers who will be attending for training. So that's when we will have the third of those listed treasurers' talks. But that's our agenda for today. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. And moving now to Mary Whitten, who's going to help us with questions and chat. Mary?
All right, so what we're going to ask you to do is post your questions in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that, and we will deal with the questions at the end. But we also would like you, if you have topics you would like for future treasurers talks, please put those there as well. And I'm going to keep that list. So as we do our planning for the next couple of treasurers talks, we have information that you want to hear.
Thanks, Mary. And we'll be asking you to come back in probably about 9:25 to give us a synopsis of the kind of questions that we've received. And we'll, at the end, maybe go over some future talks or deal with that separately. We'll see how that goes. But thank you, Mary, for monitoring the chat. Does everyone know how to use the chat? Down at the bottom of your screen, maybe the second icon over is chat, and you can type in your question and Mary will monitor that for us. Liz, you've got a wonderful calendar that you're going to go over. You're not going to read these slides to us, but you're going to highlight some important items on the yearly calendar for our treasurers.
That is true, Diana. This is the yearly calendar. Please take a look, and I've got a couple things I need to mention. This slide and the next three are a yearly calendar that gives you information about what to do and when. But if you take a moment and look at this, please. The bottom one applies to, as I said, U.S. state and chapter organizations, but that July 1 through November 15th is very, very important. That's the window for filing our IRS 990. Please do not miss that window. Next slide, please. Take a look at this side, please, about July 31st and September 30th. These are in regard to the forms that we file. On this slide, July or September 30th is one we want to, whoops, one before that. Slide before that, please. Yes, September 30th. Note about this one. This is the form that state organization treasurers complete and file and send to international. But it is very, very important that they receive the chapter treasurers Form 15 to get the information that they need to file their particular form. Now the next slide, please. October 1st, we've passed that date and unpaid members were dropped from membership. But please remind people in your state organizations and in your chapters that if a woman was dropped for non-payment of dues, they may certainly be reinstated. It's a very easy process. There is no fee to reinstate. So it's very important to remember that although they may have been dropped, they may certainly be reinstated as a member in DKG. So keep that in mind and remind everyone, please. For the January 1, oops, missed one. For January 1 through March 31st, please, during that time frame, if you as a treasurer are submitting a dues order, please make sure you check with International. They will double check and make sure that the dollar amounts are correct for that individual and for that time frame. As well, please check with your state treasurer to be sure that the dollar amounts are correct, because that's sort of a transition time when dues numbers are changing for International. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide of the yearly calendar. Notice it goes back to April through June. But again, this calendar we're going to try and post in Basecamp as well as in Chapter and State Connect so that you can go back and reference that calendar. And we do hope that this helps you and the chapter treasurers in the state organizations keep tabs on what is due and when. Thank you.
Liz, I think the calendar is posted in Chapter Connect and I
Good.
believe in State Connect. So
Good.
you'll find it. It's not in this format, but it's an easier to read format. It's sort of a chart, but this
Thank
is
you.
for our purposes today. And of course, this entire PowerPoint presentation is also available on State Connect as well as Chapter Connect. And then
Thank
the
you.
recording will be available later. Forms 15 and 16. Dr. Diane Anderson.
Welcome. Every year, International revises the Form 15, which chapter treasurers fill out and send. They give a copy to their president and a copy to their state treasurer. Their state treasurer then uses that information to fill out the new Form 16 that is also revised by International. And they use that, and then International uses that data to fill out the philanthropy report that they use to explain how much money that our chapters and states are giving to worthwhile endeavors. It's very important that every chapter fill out a Form 15, send it to your state treasurer by the deadline, which is July 31st, so that the state treasurer can get that information together and fill out their Form 16 when it's due, which is September 30th.
Thank you, Diane. Appreciate your words of wisdom on those two forms. Next slide, please. This is what I call a good cheat sheet. And by that, I mean, it allows our chapter treasurers as well as our state organization treasurers to have a handy reference guide that they can use when it's time to record and create a dues order and all of the member functions that are incorporated in the dues portal. So this chart begins at the dues portal level. So once our state and chapter treasurers are in the portal, if you are recording dues, the left side of that management system says pay dues, and you'll go to orders. Follow the chart downward. This has been redesigned so that it's a little easier to read. We had this available last year, but headquarters staff did a wonderful job of redesigning this so that it's easier to read and more helpful. On the pay dues order, I would like to mention that number 6, which says click print, please do that from the dues portal site. In other words, do not do a Control P to print your dues order. If you do, you will not receive all of the information that you need. Your chapter name will not be on the order, and the box which indicates the dues amounts for active, reserve, and collegiate members will not appear. And that's problematic at the international level when your dues are being processed. So we ask you to please use the print button, which appears in the dues portal at the order creation site. Moving now to the right of this, if you need to add a member, transfer a member, reinstate a member, or do any information management, that is all going to be right of the order, and that's all going to be under members. And what I'd like to ask you to do again is continue to follow this downward from 1 through 6, and the notes at the bottom are very helpful. Again, adding a member anytime, Liz mentioned that, and there is no cost and no reinstatement fee and no requirement for your chapter to vote on that. A member is a member is a member and may return at any time. Transferring, reinstating are two of the tricky ones, and I would like to ask our state treasurers, if you are creating, if you have in your state chapters. In other words, Ohio has a state chapter in which members who are geographically removed from their chapter or their chapter has dissolved and they would like to remain a member of DKG, the state treasurer manages that. We ask that if the member is still sitting in the dues portal for her chapter, that you reinstate her first and transfer her second. Again, that's only for state in the situation where we are looking at a member who wants to join the state organization versus a chapter because her chapter either is dissolved or otherwise. And our final column under member management information allows you to make any changes, and also is helpful to members, allows them to make any changes. Members are always listed by ID number. However, you can resort them by last name by using the arrows under each of those columns. Any questions that you have about member management or dues, start with your state treasurer. And if that doesn't provide the answers that you need, then please go to the international level. Very helpful and very interested in helping you. This is also available in chart form outside of this PowerPoint presentation, also on Chapter Connect. Thank you. Next slide. Janice is not here, but this is our opportunity to take a look. It's about 10:22. Mary, could you give us some updates on where we are in terms of questions so that we can address those questions while our international state and chapter treasurers may be with us before we
Yes,
go
there
to
was-
the 990?
There
Mary.
are a few questions. So one question was about whether the SALT training was for chapter presidents or state presidents, and Beverly actually answered that in the chat. If you didn't see it, it is for incoming state officers and executive executive secretaries. And one of the questions that also tied to that was around the financial support for the travel of those leaders. So if somebody wants to address that question.
I can speak, and I'll ask Peggy to also jump in and help us here. But that was addressed in the budget that was approved in the summer this year. And we did provide travel and transportation travel dollars for each state organization, and the hotel accommodations and food during the training sessions, during the days of the training, are also provided by the international organization. Peggy, we have an exact dollar amount that we're allowed up to, and I want to make sure that I have that right. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I think I know what it is, but I wasn't
truth is,
prepared
I
to
don't-
answer that question.
Other than to tell you that we do provide funds for attending a state or organization leader training. At this point, I'm not really going to discuss the mechanics of it because one of the things that I'm working on is proposing something different to the board for this summer. So if I go through all of what exists right now, it may not be that. And I can't tell you what that is because that hasn't been approved, but we do provide financial assistance. Last time around, it was primarily the airfare. your lodging and your meals while you're at the event. Going forward, the plan is to do something very, very similar, but just not exactly the same. So, but in general, those are the same expenses that would be covered. It's your transportation to get to the training and from the training, and then your hotel and your meals during the training. And that's also very, very important because if there's a conference attached, we pay for the training portion. The conference portion, if you stay for that, the extra nights of hotel and the conference registration would be your expense. So, but the good news is your transportation there is free. So if you choose to stay for the conference, at least that part, you're not having to pay for that for yourselves because that was part of your training. Does that address the question?
I believe it does.
Thanks,
The
Peggy.
other-
I think that what we're just saying is logistically, we don't have a plan, but there are dollars appropriated.
Exactly correct.
Thank you. Mary?
So there were a couple of dues questions, and one of them was about what do they do if they collect dues in March when they can't get into the website, to the portal? And also, would you rather dues be paid in one check and wait for them, or multiple checks at the various times if they collect dues over a period of time because they're chasing people down?
So the first question, what do you do with dues in March? You wait for April. The portal is closed. There's absolutely no way to get information into the portal. What that is it's an annual billing cycle. Basically, for lack of a better word, they close the database, reload the database, rebill everybody. And so, why that takes a month, I have no idea, but that's the time frame we have for that, and that's how that works. I will also suggest to you that if you're having someone join March 31st, I would encourage them, probably myself, to wait one more day, and then they get April, May, and June for free, whereas if they join March 31st, they're now paying half dues. Now, again, does $20 or $10 or whatever matter that much? Probably not, but again, a lot of times we find that we don't get a lot of new people joining during March for that reason. They wait for April. So, and then the second question was,
Around sending multiple checks or waiting for one
well,
check?
I will tell you at International, we prefer one check. If you can imagine, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,800 chapters. And if every chapter sends 2 checks, that's 3,600. If every chapter sends 3 checks, that's 5,400. You can see how that begins to change the staffing needs at headquarters, the more checks we have, because it takes the same amount of time to process one check for $40 as, at least for accounting, pretty much as one check for $4,000. It's not the amount of the check that takes the time. It's the check itself. So our preference is to keep those, but I also understand that sometimes you have that one member who just isn't paying, and rather than have 9 members wait for their dues to go in while you get that one member that you've been trying to get a hold of and your schedules just don't jive and all that, go ahead and send us the 9 members and then wait, and chase the one. I don't think it's fair to the rest of your members for you to have to hold those checks for a month while you chase someone. So do your best, be reasonable, think about it. And my thing is always, I ask that you think when you also think about chapter, think state and international, and start doing the math in your head a little bit, and you'll see how that exponentially grows. So I literally have one chapter that sends a check for every single member. That's a lot of extra work for all of us. So, and not just me, but the state, as I assume the state gets the same thing. So, just some thought into that.
Okay,
Thank you,
another
Peggy.
couple questions. One was somebody watched the base camp presentation and wasn't able to log in. So what should they do? And somebody else can't find Chapter Connect and tried the search button and wasn't able to find it. So what should we do there?
Okay, those are 2 different kinds of questions, very similar in a way. The first one on the base camp, that's a tech question. If you all are dependent on me for technology, we're in a lot of trouble. Because half the time I can't get my printer to work and I'm yelling out the door for Victor to come help me. And Beverly can tell you that that's true. So, so what I can tell you is, if you, that base camp, first of all, that presentation is recorded and it's available on the website. The easiest way to find anything on the website is to hit that chat button. If they're open, they will answer immediately. Even if they're not open, they will get to that the first thing in the morning when we are open. So chat is the number one way to go on any of that stuff. Right now, I think, of course, email and call. And then the second question, Chapter Connect. If you cannot find Chapter Connect, it's probably because we don't show you as your chapter treasurer. Only chapter treasurers, I think presidents, access Chapter Connect. So if you don't have that access, and you should, what you need to do is reach out to International or reach out to your chapter or other chapter or state officer and get in touch with International to get yourself added as a chapter or president. We do that because obviously Chapter Connect controls billing. And so we can't have every single member have access to the billing system. So that's why we limit it to treasurers and presidents, and people wonder why that is. It's just that we're giving you a higher level of access to our database than the average member, and we have to control that a little bit. So if you don't see Chapter Connect, it's because you don't have the credentials, and the way to get the credentials is through membership, and the way to reach membership is through chat. So use that chat button.
Okay, and the last one is around this presentation. Where were they going to be able to find this presentation after?
This presentation will be under Chapter Connect, State Connect, and Treasurer's Resources. And the reason I add that last one is you don't have to be a president or a treasurer to access Treasurer's Resources. I don't think you even have to be a treasurer to access Treasurer's Resources. Those resources are open to anyone. And you can click on it and you will find it there. The only thing is it is again behind the login. So in other words, I don't think you can access it unless you're logged into DKG's website, but once you're there, it's under Treasurer's Resources. And again, as a reminder, this is a recording and it will be posted. So I always want people to be aware that if you're speaking, then be aware your voice and image may appear on our website.
And that was
Peggy.
the last one. And I just want to remind people, I haven't seen any topics for another treasurer's talk. So if they have thoughts of those, they can post those too in the chat.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. And before we move to our saying goodbye to our international treasurers and organization treasurers, I would like to remind you, if you are a new treasurer, a new chapter treasurer, in order to find Chapter Connect, you may have credentials. You want to find that by looking on the website, left side, My DKG. There's a drop-down menu under My DKG. Under that, My Account. Click My Account, and you may find that you do have credentials. You just didn't know where they were. So before you call, take a look at those two at the website and take a look and see if you do have credentials to have access to Chapter Connect. State organization treasurers have State Connect, and chapter treasurers have Chapter Connect. Chapter presidents have Chapter Connect. So you should be able to find that if you hold any of those three offices. And if not, then please follow Peggy's great advice of the chat. I hope that was helpful. Thank you to our international treasurers who have joined us for this first session. We look forward to seeing you in January. We'll post an agenda, and believe me, we will remain busy and active in meeting the needs of our organization treasurers. U.S. treasurers, please stay on. We're going to go over some 990 information, and Peggy is going to be in charge of that. So when you're ready, Peggy, take a deep breath, get your pencils ready, and here we go.
Good morning. And if you're an international member and you're really fascinated by U.S. tax law, you are welcome to stay. We are not excluding you. And however, we are a little bit concerned if you're an international member and you're fascinated by U.S. tax law. So let me see. Now I keep losing my little mouse guy. Here we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about filing the Form 990. Let's get started real quick on what that is. The Form 990, the IRS considers it an information return. It also can serve as a tax return, but for our purposes, we hope to always keep it an information return. There are three basic different forms of the Form 990. There's a 990, there's a 990EZ, and there's a 990N. And which form you file is dependent upon your level of income and your level of assets. Almost all chapters file a 990N. States, I have a few that file 990Ns, many file a 990EZ or a regular 990. International files a regular 990. The biggest difference is the amount of information required. The 990N is about 8 questions. You answer it online on the internet through a website with the IRS. The 990 is, I don't know, ours is probably 40 pages. So that's your difference in terms of the level of reporting and why that 990N is so important, because it is the easiest form to file. And so keeping up with it is very, very critical. Okay.
Thank you, Peggy. And I would like to remind those chapters who may be getting large bequests, take a look at this information because it may change which form you should be filing. And I know that that happens in Ohio and it may happen elsewhere. They're kind of a surprise, but it does require a different filing if you fall into gross receipts, which change over 50,000.
Yeah. Also remember though, this is one, and I get this question occasionally, unfortunately, I guess in a way, because it means that we've received a bequest, which is a good and bad thing. That is an average over 3 years. So if your normal gross receipts are $1,000 a year and $1,000 a year, and then you get a $60,000 bequest, that year you would be over 50, but on average for the 3 you are not, so you can still file. If that bequest were 200,000, then over those 3 years your average is not 50,000, and you now have to file a different form until your average falls back under. It's kind of an unusual situation. It happens occasionally, but that is something to be aware of, is that is a 3-year average. So that will determine what you file. Okay, next. So the 990N, the only way to file the 990N is electronically on the IRS website. They used to have this beautiful system where they mailed you a postcard. You wrote the information on the back of a postcard and you sent it back. It was simple, it was beautiful, it worked great for our treasurers, but unfortunately, apparently not for the IRS. So they created a system that you can go in and file electronically. You answer this exact same questions as were on the back of the postcard. You now do it electronically. There is no fee to file this. So if you are on the IRS website and you are filing the 990N with the IRS, there should be no fee. If someone says that there's a $15 fee to file or a $10 fee to log in, you are not on the 990, the IRS website. I would recommend that you not utilize them. Anyone that charges you, first of all, like I said, it's 8 questions, so it's really not worth the money to pay it. I've also had a treasurer, and bless her, she paid this organization year after year to file her 990N, only to find out they never filed a thing, and they scammed her all of those years. So, you know, if you're paying a fee to file, back out. If you have concerns about that, contact International, and we will tell you, help guide you to where you need to be. There are several ways to access the IRS website. You can access it directly by going to the IRS site and then clicking on charities and nonprofits, or you can access it through the DKG website by clicking on our link. One thing that sometimes confuses people, if you log into DKG and you click on that link, you will still have to log into the IRS. Logging into DKG is not going to give you login access to the IRS. It will just take you to that login page. Some people get confused and think, well, I just logged in. Why am I logging in again? Well, the first time you logged into DKG, now you're going to log into the IRS. The IRS system, the hardest part has always been, in my opinion, logging in. There's a couple of things you need to know. One is it does not work for a treasurer to share her login year to year. What happens is the account, first of all, is tied to an email address. So in order for that to work, you would have to share and move that email address along. So you could have a, DKG treasurer's email address and share that. The problem is then the security questions also belong to the individual. So if you ever have to try and recover something or get access to that account some other way, you can't because they were not your security questions. So create your own account. You will create your account and add your chapter to your account, and then from there, you'll be able to file. This is an MFA system. That means you have to log in and then verify your identity. So in order for that to work, you need to be able to log in at the same time that you can access a cell phone or your email. So if you have difficulty accessing those, say on your phone, then you may want to have your phone and your laptop to file the form, because you will have to have some device that they can contact you in and you can respond with. The IRS website has historically not worked well with Apple. So the Safari, which is your iPad and your iPhone, actually you can file with any of those devices. You just need to use Google Chrome. So go to Google and then go to the IRS website, or go to Microsoft Edge and then go to the IRS website. Don't go there from Safari. And again, if you need help with that, contact headquarters. We can kind of try and explain that to you, because sometimes those terms don't necessarily resonate with your treasurers. But basically, don't use an Apple, the Apple browser. Use a Google or a Microsoft browser to file. I pull this up because this is so important. This is how you know where you're legitimately filing. If when you go there and you start to file, at the top of your screen should be that little flag and says an official website of the United States government. If you don't see that up there at the top, you are not on an official website of the United States government and not where you need to be to file your return. The information you need is basic and simple. You all have it. You all know it. The question I get asked about most is the doing business as field. It is not required. What I recommend and ask, though, is if you're willing to put in your chapter name and put it in by the 2-letter alpha and then the state and then the Greek. So Alabama Alpha chapter would put in AL and then alpha. And the reason is the only place you're ever going to really see that is on a report that I file. It helps me identify chapters. The IRS considers every single chapter to be Delta Kappa Gamma Society International. So when you go online and you go to file your 990N or your 990 or any of those forms, that's the name that's going to appear on the first line, Delta Kappa Gamma Society International. That is correct.
Peggy, what if I don't know where my chapter EIN number is? Can I find it on Chapter Connect?
I don't
think
know,
so.
because I've
I
never
think you
done
can.
that. I
Okay,
can.
let
I
me
can
answer
find
that
all
question
of your
then.
EINs. So that was a
Asked and
trick
answered. Yes.
So you can find
Yes.
it there. Yes.
Chapter treasurers, you can find your chapter EIN if you don't have it or if it wasn't passed to you. It is in Chapter Connect. If you click your state name, it'll give you your EIN number. Again, you need help with that. You need help locating it, chat away. But it is available on Chapter Connect. Thank
See,
you.
now I've learned something brilliant. That's good to know, and it's something I will share with our chat team at work so they can pass that word along. Thank you, Diana. All right. So going on, the most common problem in filing the form is they put punctuation in that address field. They put apartment and then they put in a hashtag. Or they put apartment and a period, and we. IRS does not want any punctuation in any of those fields. Do not put a comma after the name of the city. While grammatically correct, not good for the IRS. Any of those will cause you to have an error message, and you won't be able to get past that screen, and you won't be able to figure out why, because it doesn't really say you're using punctuation. Just tells you invalid. All right. The most important reason for filing that 990 or the 990N is that is what maintains your not-for-profit status with the IRS. If you fail to file the Form 990 with the IRS, you jeopardize your not-for-profit status. What happens when you lose that? You become a for-profit business, and now you are subject to for-profit business rules. Not what you want for your association, not what anyone wants for their association. To get back into a not-for-profit status, you would have to reapply through the IRS. And the first time you got not-for-profit, you got it by virtue of the internationals group exemption. If you lose that, you no longer qualify for the group exemption, and you have to go through the full process of becoming a not-for-profit with the IRS. Most importantly, you have to pay a $600 filing fee. And I know many chapters cannot afford that $600 to get back to a not-for-profit status. So on 990Ns, you only have to file once in 3 years. I tell you, file every year. Literally, the hardest part is logging in. And if you only do it once or every 3 years, it becomes even harder, because now you're trying to remember what you did 3 years ago instead of what you did last year. And recovering all that information is just difficult. Just do it every year, get it done, know you're in compliance, and never have to worry about it. If you file other forms of 990, you're not really even allowed that luxury of once every 3 years. They'll be after you after the first time you don't file. A 990N, there is no way to file it late, so you must file it by November 15th. If you don't, then you're going to have to file a different form of 990. The other forms can go on extension, and 990N cannot. When assistance is needed, this is very, very, very important. Before calling the IRS, contact your state organization treasurer or contact International and ask us the questions first. There's a chance you'll have to contact the IRS and go through that process, but there's a chance we will save you that. Contacting the IRS can be incredibly frustrating. One, because it can be time consuming. You can hold for a very long time waiting for someone to answer. I think they've been doing better on that recently, but you still could hold for a very long time. The second thing is, we are a very specific kind of organization within the millions and millions of organizations that the IRS deals with, in that we have this group exemption and a group exemption set of rules. And there's a lot of those organizations out there. Parent-teacher associations are one, we're one, there's lots of them. But it's often very difficult to get someone at the IRS necessarily who has familiarity with those things. And so a lot of times you'll get an answer, and then you will contact me going, this makes no sense. And I will go, yeah, sorry, I think they were confused. So I suggest you start with us first. And then if that doesn't work, we'll send you to the IRS. And I don't mean to disparage them, because, you know, they're public servants doing the best they can with a job with very little resources. But it will just save you a lot of frustration if you contact us first. And then if we can't fix it for you, we'll send you there. And we'll give you a phone number and all of that. Not that I have any special connections into the IRS, because I wished I did, but I do not. So is there any questions about any of that or anything in this presentation today?
Mary, can you help us with
I
that?
do have a couple of other questions. So in terms of if there are some chapters that have dissolved in a state, and it said, if those Form 15s come in late, do you want a revised Form 16?
The short answer is no.
Okay. So again, with dissolved chapters so it says for dissolved chapters, if you could clarify what needs to happen for a 990N. And the question that came with that was, has your organization gone out of business, was the question.
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
If you have a chapter that is dissolved, we ask that a final 990 be filed. In this case, a final 990N. And generally, we ask that the chapter treasurer do that. Now, I'll be very honest. A lot of times when you have a chapter that has dissolved, it's very hard to get the chapter treasurer to wait until after July 1st of the next year to go in and file that return. So sometimes I have state treasurers that will file that on behalf of the chapter. But on that, when you file it, you mark that, has the organization gone out of business? You mark that yes. Okay, that is the number one way the IRS will find out that your chapter has gone away or that chapter has gone away. Without that, what they'll see is a failure to file, and they'll start sending out letters saying you didn't file your return. I can also tell you that sometimes you mark that box and you still get that failure to file letter. But now you can say, but I did file on this date and I told you we were going out of business. So number one is, it's very important to do that. I understand sometimes treasurers are reluctant to do that because they're done, they're over, they're moving on. In that case, we ask the treasurers to file that. It used to be that they then asked you for the date of termination, but I understand from Bill that it no longer has that question. Is that correct, Bill?
No, that's it.
Yes, that is correct. We're not seeing that question any longer. You just move on to the next cell, the next question below.
Thanks.
So it
Bill.
used to pop up and ask you for the date of dissolution. Bill, the last couple of treasurers that he's helped, we have not seen that field pop up. If it does pop up, the date of dissolution is the date that the state approved the dissolution. So whenever the state voted to accept the dissolution, that's the date we use as the date of dissolution. But again, and this is one thing where it's also critical. When you work on these a lot, as Mr. Bill does, you will begin to see trends in questions, and that's kind of how one of the ways we find out something's changed with the IRS is we start seeing a question that's different than it used to be. So again, always check with headquarters because we may be seeing something new. If not headquarters staff, watch Basecamp, watch the news, watch the website, because we also, will do our best to communicate that to treasurers that, hey, we've seen something different or new. But again, that's one of the ways. So it's also important when you see something different or not going as expected or as you're used to, that you let us know as well, because that's where we see the trend and can go. Last year, it was a button that used to always default, and all of a sudden it didn't default anymore, and everyone was getting stuck and booted out for a simple click, but they randomly changed it.
So there's a question that popped up that kind of goes along with that. So what happens if a chapter is dissolved but has not been voted on by the state yet? How do you handle that one?
I don't think you're dissolved until the state officially allows for that dissolution. You may no longer be doing business as a chapter, but until the state recognizes your dissolution, you are still a chapter.
Okay.
So you'll have to file.
Okay. Can I ask my state treasurer if I
I do
file?
think we're going to offer, ask the question again, Mary.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. I'm having a little internet problem. I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but anyway, can I ask my state treasurer if I filed was the question that came up.
If you filed?
Yes,
if you
state treasurers.
Well, anyone can go into the IRS system and see a chapter or state or internationals filing. All you need to do is go to find the exempt organization, and there's a search bar in there that will show you, and you can search by name, city, state, EIN. I'll tell you, searching by name is kind of difficult for Delta Kappa Gamma because remember a few screens back, I told you every chapter is listed as Delta Kappa Gamma. So if you put that into the IRS website and no other parameters, you're going to get screens and screens and screens of stuff, or very few things because it returns so many, it returns nothing. But if you know the city or you know the state or you know the EIN, you can look up any organization. It's kind of a open reporting rule.
Okay.
Maybe what we could do as a finance committee is provide, again, a fresh set of directions to both the state and chapter treasurers about how they can confirm that their filing has been accepted. We know I do that a lot for my chapters that I haven't heard from before November.
I know we go over
15th,
that in
but
SALT,
I
and
think
it's
we
part of
could,
our.
I think
it's
we
part
can
of our-
provide some
Yeah.
easy step-by-step information to just confirm if you filed. And that could be one of our charges going forward.
Yeah, I know it's in it was in the SALT training last time, and so maybe we
Correct.
can, yeah.
Correct.
You can find it there now, or we can pull that out and put a resource up. So that's one thing we'll work on for you as a committee.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Peggy.
another question came up around this same thing is if chapter treasurers leave abruptly, can somebody beside the president fill in or the finance committee chair fill in to do this 990?
Anybody designated by the chapter can file your 990. Much as I designate, in a lot of ways, I designate our CPA to file ours, right? He prepares it. I review it, but he files it. So you can hire someone to prepare it. Any member can prepare the 990 or the 990N. What you need though is that responsible party. You need to know whose name you're going to put on the form when you file it. If you don't have a treasurer, you could put the president's name. You could even potentially have to put in the vice president or the executive secretary's name. So you do need the name of a responsible party, but it does not have to be the treasurer that files this form.
Okay. There was a question, but how do I obtain the DSCO? So DSCO nonprofit certificate with a corrected name. I think I copied that right. Yeah. Oh, DCSO. So DC state organization. I flipped my letters.
That's a kind of multi-layer question. I'm going to invite you to contact me directly on that one, because part of it depends on how the DCSO is registered with their state. First of all, are you a corporation registered with your state, or are you a business association? The bottom line is, because I'm not exactly sure what certificate you're looking for. If you're looking for a verification of your EIN and that kind of thing, you get that through a letter that you can get from the IRS. And again, I invite you to contact me and I'll give you instructions on how to receive that letter. I actually have it in the under other resources on changing banks or changing bank signatures. There's a short 5 or 10 PDF on that, and in there we talk about the letter if you need a letter to verify your EIN or your not-for-profit status. So I would start there, look at that presentation, or contact International and we will help you with that. But from there, yeah, it starts with how your state organization is organized to begin with. We have a letter that we created International. There's this letter to verify your EIN. There's some other steps we can help you. We just need to know a little bit more about you to tell you what you need, which documents you need, I think is the best way to put
Peggy,
that.
let's remind all of our chapters that no matter whether you're a state organization or chapter organization or Delta Kappa Gamma International, the IRS considers us a 501c6 organization, which, as you just described, is an association. We are not a charity. Now, you may have a foundation that is a 501c3, but Organizationally, we are not-for-profits in an association environment, and we are not a charity. And so we don't have exactly the same kind of documents that allow for exemptions from state and local taxes. We're exempt
Yeah.
from federal taxes, but not state and local taxes.
Okay.
Let me, excuse me, let me jump in for a second. Also, I want to go back to the individual who asked the question about if there is a treasurer who is out of pocket for some reason and they have to designate another chapter member to file the 990N. I think the easiest thing in that situation is if the designated chapter member would just call me. She and I can file that 990N together, and that I think that would be the easiest thing there.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, so around dissolved chapters again, I'm having trouble with my computer, I think. So any dissolved chapter should, if they dissolve during that year, should do a financial report. And if they're no longer intact and that person isn't there, somebody, am I correct that somebody from the state should file that?
Correct. Ultimately, I will also report dissolved chapters in once a year. I have to reconcile the EINs that we show as an organization versus what the IRS shows as listed for our organization. So I have to go through and match all those up. And I also report dissolved chapters. If your chapter is dissolved and you've already and they've already, or that chapter's dissolved and they've already reported to the IRS, then it's done. Otherwise, I report it again. I will tell you, it is much more effective to get them to recognize you as dissolved by filing that 990N than the report that I file, because I've had years where it takes me reporting that 2 or 3 times before they actually get the records updated. So I always start by filing that. I will also report it, and hopefully between the two of us, the IRS will get their records up to date.
So our assistant treasurers listed in Chapter Connect or State Connect if you have a state assistant or a state or assistant for a chapter.
No.
And then the last question that I'm seeing is, what if you're collecting dues from members who do not live in your state? Does that matter?
Well, as an international organization, not at all. I don't know what your state rules are. When Diana said organizations are subject to state taxes, I don't know that most states have an income tax on associations. They do charge them property tax and sales tax, but most states kind of follow the feds in terms of if you're an exempt organization federally, you're an exempt organization for state in terms of income taxes. And that's one of the biggest confusions sometimes. We pay payroll taxes, all levels found. If we had employees at the foundation, they would pay payroll taxes too. So when you say you're exempt from taxes, you got to be real careful about those words because there are some taxes that apply.
Okay, another question just popped up. My current 990 filing and last year filing were accepted. However, the filing 2 years ago was not accepted, and I don't know why. Is there anything I need to do?
No, you have a valid filing in 1 of 3 years, so you are okay. Why it wasn't accepted 2 years ago, I couldn't tell you any more than you can see it now. But at this point, you're back in compliance, and going forward, you keep filing, you stay in compliance. So you should be just fine, because if you've got a valid filing after that, then you have one in 1 of 3 years.
That is all I see for questions.
And it is time to wrap up here. We try very hard to be respectful of the 1 hour time limit. So Diana, I'll let you wind it up.
Well, thank you so much, Peggy, and to all of our Finance Committee members, Bill Staples, and those of you who have joined us this morning. We hope that your hour was well spent. Keep the questions coming. Keep your queries coming, because that gives us information about how do we proceed as a Finance Committee and how do we support you. As you recall, that's really one of the most important things that your International Finance Committee does, provide provides resources to you. We look forward to seeing you at our next Treasurers Talk in January. Remember, you can contact any of us through the Finance Committee under committees on the website. We all have our emails are there. You can contact us individually. And using Bill and Cy and Peggy, they collect questions as well for us, and that drives oftentimes our next work. I would say that I think you can expect to hear some information about disillusion. I think that we're going to be working very hard at trying to create a more, an easier to use system for disillusion. And I see some questions about new members and lots of things that we didn't get to today. But in respect of your time, we thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you in January. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.